Good morning and welcome to councillors and staff and members of the public gallery. Federation Council wishes to advise members of the public gallery the council meetings will be recorded and will be available after each meeting on council's website. All care will be taken to maintain the privacy of those in attendance. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event your image is broadcast. This includes any filming by television cameras if attendance is approved by the General Manager or Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today, the Bangarang people, and acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who now reside in the area. I extend that respect to elders past and present of the Bangarang Nations. I now call for apologies.
Mr Mayor, we do have apologies from Councillor Andrew Kennedy, who was granted leave of absence at the last meeting to be away for today, and an apology from Councillor Gale. Recommendation to accept those.
Moved by Councillor Wales, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay. Leave of absence, yeah. Applications, we have one leave of absence. There's a recommendation there that Councillor G.L. Law be granted leave of absence for this meeting. Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 18th of February 2020. Moved by Councillor Longley, seconded by Councillor Meagle. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We have disclosures of interest. There'll be none.
I haven't received any.
And Merrill minute number 6. So 6.1, meeting with West Kooragang Private Irrigation District. There's a recommendation there that Council note the Merrill minute on the meeting held between Council representatives and West Kooragang on the 10th of March. And point 2, the Council receive a further report on this matter as and when any other opportunities progress. Can I have a move, please, Councillors? Moved by Councillor Longmire, seconded by Councillor Thomas. Councillor Longmire.
If I may, Mr Mayor, under the opportunity just to make a comment in regard to the meeting that the West Kooragang process is really badly done by at the moment, and have been for quite a while. I think over 2 years have had no allocation, and so it's something that the council will affect, or is affecting council, because of so much of that area within our boundary and into Berrigan Council area, the non-production. And so at the end of the day, one of the things we should be trying to, and it's a bit difficult under the circumstances with the Murray-Darling Basin Plan review, or hasn't been reviewed, but a lot of people calling for it to be reviewed, that it be noted somewhere that we make a determination to support the West Kooragang in their future of allocation of water.
Thank you, Councillor Longmire. Councillor Thomas.
I'd just like to add to that recommendation, if there was a possibility to do so, is that we invite Mr Andrew Kelly and any available directors to our next meeting, which happens to occur in Urannah in April, to address Chamber, because I think it's an important issue as we move forward, because as you know, this watering season is about to close, the next one will open, and they are looking at zero water allocations, and especially some of those 4 key factors that were identified at that meeting last week in terms of, you know, water for fodder, the methodology around the buybacks and how inequitable that has been for that particular private irrigation scheme, and also making the connections with the other 3 private irrigation schemes that were highlighted to us within our Ramsdale area.
Yep. No,
you can add that to our recommendation, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, happy to do so. The mover, okay with that?
Yeah, very much so.
Point number 3, that Council invite Andrew Kelly and available West Kooragang directors to attend the April Council meeting to address Council.
Sorry, just to get that last bit, Councillor Thomas, would it be ahead of the water market opening up again, or you just want to have to address Council on their allocation?
Well, the way I had worded it in my notes was to look at the scope of how we can help them, especially around those 4 identified areas from last week, which I have noted and I was happy to talk to in delegates' reports, but I can bring forward now if you'd like me to, but I'll leave that up to you to decide.
Probably happy to take this point 3.
Yeah, and then still talking delegates.
Yeah.
So we just get we got some definition on the end bit there, make that more succinct.
That counts, right, I'll go back to my notes.
maybe,
Just address council.
Yeah,
leave it at
so
that.
to attend workshop in year only to create opportunities for further scope to move forward in this space.
To move forward. To address issues
Well, I
around
said
water.
the word scope, but yeah, address issues would be fine. As per raised,
As raised at the,
as raised last week, I've made note of them.
at the meeting on 10th of March.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Moving secretary. Good with that, so I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Now I'll move on to the General Manager's report. Item number 7.
Before we go through the GM reports as listed, Mr Mayor, we do have public speakers with us today who have lodged applications to address council and report on the agenda. So I would ask council whether they consider allowing the public speakers to speak now and then post that address on report item 9.9, development application. We then bring forward that report in the agenda to then determine that report. So if that was okay?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I don't want more information, right?
No, we shouldn't until
Don't
we
need
be able to go to public
Okay.
speakers now. So we've got Robert Pearce. Robert, are you available to come forward and address the council?
Yeah.
There's a 5-minute address for council, Robert, and then you're allowed to ask questions. The councillors could ask questions of you post that. So
Okay,
for that time, it gets some.
good morning everyone. My name's obviously Robert Pearce and I'm here to address council in regards to development application 2019-140 for application for community subdivision and 5 jetties and 10 berths. I don't believe that the size of the 5 jetties and 10 berths is in keeping with the development aims for 8 Mile Island, and I don't think it's in the public interest because it's right against McCormick Park, which is frequented by all ratepayers and any visitors to the area. I think it poses a hazard to the swimmers. At the mediation meeting, when local residents asked why all the jetties were on the McCormick Park side of the boat ramp, they said it was to provide a safe swimming spot for their community members. What about the safety of the public who has full access to the fall of Lake Mile Island? Because this is public water, as pointed out by the response from the Maritime Services. There's been a number of trees removed on that lakeside lot, and I've been told that some of the sugar gums were full of white ants, and neighbours have confirmed that. That under the comment by the Diversity and Conservation Division of the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, council consent is required to remove those trees. Now, it was not until the mediation session the council asked to see the arborist report. So, and these trees were removed within the initial public consultation period. Now, the 5 jetties and 10 berths constitute a marina large under the Murray Regional Environmental Plan No. 2, which declares the development to be designated and requires an EIS, which is not being provided. However, MREP2 actually determines the 5 jetties and to be a marina, which is prohibited in the R2 low density residential zone under the Coral LEP, where a marina is prohibited. Now, the developers have never claimed that it's not a large marina under MREP2. They made the claim that that was overridden by EPA Regulation 2000. There's been 2 consultations on that matter. The Ombudsman's Office requested that MDBA come up with an assessment as to whether or not it was designated development, and their conclusion was that it is. Council then sought legal advice from, I think, PVC, expert planning lawyers, they also reiterated that it does constitute designated development. The council assessment report has then tried to apply the standard instrument dictionary, which is the template that the Cora LEP is based on, MREP2, and you cannot legally apply a dictionary that is specific to one environmental planning instrument to another environmental planning instrument. And MREP2 clearly states that this constitutes a marina large, and any marina is prohibited in the Cora LEP. Now, because MREP2 is an SEPP, it overrides the Cora Local Environment Plan, and that with any inconsistency. Now, it's interesting, yesterday afternoon when I addressed the Western Regional Planning Panel, the opportunity arose for me to ask the chairman if that inconsistency has to be applied, and his answer was yes, there is no room for consent authority to ignore that. And councillors Whitechurch and Wales were in the room, and a number of council staff when that was stated to me. So, therefore, the definition of MREP2 must be applied to this development, and once it is determined that it is a marina, it is prohibited in the area.
I think that's all.
Can I just ask the Mayor for an opportunity to finish off?
Well, there will be questions on it. So.
Can I make my last point?
Yeah.
Thank you. They say there's no moorings, but the definition of mooring makes no distinction between permanent and temporary, and the developers admit that these jetties are to allow for 10 temporary moorings. For berthing, which there's nothing in the definition to say they have to be permanent, and berthing is refers to the process of mooring a boat in a designated place called berth. So therefore, there are 10 moorings, and there's only one mooring permitted within the lot. Now, Division 4.3 clause 4.164b of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act states that a development consent may be granted to that development except for a specific part or aspect of that development. I therefore ask that when making your determination, you give consideration to granting consent to the development except for the 5 jetties and 10 berths. Instead, allow for 1 jetty and 1 berth placed at a safe distance from McCormick Park, which is allowable under the Cora Local Environment Plan. And I believe if consent is granted as is for the development, Council is open to a legal challenge, and considering the expert advice is that this is a designated development, and therefore that determines it is a marina, which is prohibited in the zone.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Pearce. Councillors, would you like to ask Mr. Pearce any questions while you have the opportunity?
Probably just one.
Councillor Mingle.
Mr. Pearce, is the objection to the development, or is it the objection to the process?
The objection is to the large marina. The 5 jetties and 10 berths is clearly defined as a large marina, which the panel chair yesterday said there is no room to ignore that. I have no objection at all to the rest of the development, and that's why I've suggested that you consider granting approval to the development subject to the 5 jetties and 10 berths being removed, and 1 jetty and 1 berth be permitted, which is consistent with all the other lots along the way. And also I think it lessens increases the safety to the users of McCormick Park.
Thank you for that one. Councillor Longmire.
Could I ask, Robert, who do you believe would be the legal challenger?
That could be anybody who sees this as a failure to follow the legal process in determining it. And anyone has the right to challenge that within 28 days, I believe. And the other note I was going to make is Division 1, Clause 9.61A of the EPA Act states that the Minister may appoint a planning administrator or a regional planning panel, or all of them, to exercise functions of a council if the Minister is of the opinion that the council has failed to comply with obligations under the planning legislation.
Right, I think that covers it.
It does,
Yeah, thank you. Was there any further questions there, councillors? Councillor White.
Yeah, Mr. Hughes, if I could just probably relate to that area, which I know fairly well, not been to the site prior to the proposed development and in the journey of it. I believe that there's quite a few jetties all the way along that bank on some of the existing houses and probably been there for a fair while. And I also acknowledge that the MREP2 overrides quite a few of the acts and different legislation, but there's also a lot of contradictory policies and legislation within this determination. Would you agree with that?
I think it's fairly clear cut. I think the inconsistency in this case is the definition of a marina.
Or the interpretation?
No, the definition.
Yeah.
Like you can't apply, as I said, you can't apply the definition from the dictionary to another instrument. And there is a very clear definition of a marina in the MREP2. And the inconsistency is that whether or not it's permanent or temporary base storage. And the MREP2 refers only to berthing for 10 days. And there's been two, I would assume that the MDBA's response at the request of the Ombudsman would have been handled by their legal team. Council's expert legal advice is obviously top level.
Thank you. Councillor Whitechurch, did you want to add to that question? Or?
No, that's fine. I think Councillor Meagle tipped off on the other point that I was going to raise, which was your objection is, do you have property near the development or your...
No, as you know, I live on the river. It's part of the area of RFP2, and I think, the river environment needs to be protected. I also think community interest needs to be protected. And while you say most of the lots along there have a jetty, and I agree with that, most of them do, but most of them don't have 5, they have 1. If you allow 5, any one of those other lot owners could do a subdivision anywhere in Noara and apply for the same thing. You're opening up a can of worms.
Thank you very much. Anything further, councillors? If not, I've
got one more speaker.
One more, we've got another speaker. Thanks very much,
Thanks,
Mr.
Robert.
Pearce.
Okay, well, thank you very much to everybody for allowing me to speak.
Yep.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
So I'd ask Andrew Mott and David Hunter to come forward and speak on the development.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, councillors and council staff for the opportunity to speak.
Not sure what we've done.
As introduced, I'm Andrew Mott. We're obviously the applicants on behalf of the developer, Mr Bob Kay, made the application to council for a community development comprising 10 lots, 10 residential lots, with a community area which the point of contention being the 5 jetties. With respect to the objections that have been raised, we've gone through this process, or worked through this process with council, objectors and interested parties since July last year when our application was made. We maintain that our application comprises 10 residential lots with 5 jetties, being less than 1 jetty per lot. The definition of a jetty, obviously there's some issues around which point of view you take there. We maintain that council has sought legal advice as to what this application comprises, what the boat use or recreation use of the jetties will be, and that we fall within the definition of a jetty. Through the community title, it's envisaged that a community statement will be prepared and registered with the title, limiting the use of the jetties for recreational purposes and not long-term storage. Indeed, the prevailing weather conditions at the lake, particularly in that area, do not allow for long-term storage. I would confidently suggest that anybody that left their boat there for an extended period of time would find it in poor condition when they return to using it. We've been through mediation with the landowners and those people that objected. We've taken that on good faith and we've tried to come up with a solution to their concerns. Indeed, the park itself was probably operating under existing use rights, which what I would suggest was no formal planning instrument that allowed it to operate that as such. There was up to 100 people there at any one time. We're replacing that use with 10 residential properties, reducing the amount of traffic, reducing the amount of demand on essential services, and we believe creating greater amenity to the local residents. With respect to the jetties, the area along Lang Street and Mulwales foreshore, the use we maintain is consistent with what's already there. If I was to refer to different examples, we could look at the length of the jetty at the Club Mulwala, which the combined length of that would exceed what we're proposing here. And within another jurisdiction, there's been 5 jetties recently installed on the Victorian side of the Lake Mulwala for a very similar development. I appreciate that that is probably outside council's consideration, but we would further maintain that this is consistent with how the lake is used. We appreciate your consideration of it. Happy to answer any questions regarding it, and we look forward to your positive outcome.
Thank you very much. Councillors, opportunity for the questions. And that'd be good. Councillor Meagles.
Thank you. The definition, has the proposal been amended since it was originally put, the original DA application was put in, sorry?
Yeah, so the original application included a structure that looped around, or was entirely comprised within the tidal boundary, but looped around the boat storage area, or the jetty area, to provide greater access to the water, basically.
Okay.
That structure was downscaled in size because we wanted to avoid this confusion about what is a jetty and what is a marina. Certainly the structures that are proposed are consistent with what's there. There's no ballast or structure beneath the water line that is there for sort of calming water or anything of that nature. We're not intending to impact on what's already there, basically.
And is it my understanding that the jetties have been shifted?
Correct. The jetties have been moved further to the west to accommodate the objectors' concerns during mediation, and the impact or any potential negative impact that may occur within the park at the eastern side.
Sure.
But I would like to sort of reinforce the point that any structures that are proposed within the lake are fully contained within our tidal boundary.
I'm sorry, got very interested there. Councillor Thomas, thank you.
Just to clarify that point, just really for Chamber, we have talked about it in Chamber before, this particular DA, obviously. Just so then, just everyone's on the same page, can you just enlighten the room on how far out into the water people officially own?
Yeah, it sort of varies along the lake.
Mm-hmm.
The history of the lake, and there's other far more learned people that know more about it than I do. But when the lake was created, the titles obviously were what would have been farmland, as they were dedicated by the Crown originally. The lake is an irregular shape, which didn't necessarily respect those tidal boundaries. So when the titles were created, and typically an easement for water storage was created against those titles. In this particular case, it's more of a wedge shape. It's not a rectangular or a regular shape. The actual area of the community parcel is in excess of an acre, about 4,400 square metres, and the jetties obviously now comprise a pretty small part of that.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Whitchurch.
Yeah, we just, I do note the original development application, and obviously as a developer or being involved with it, you'd go for the biggest cherry or biggest apple you could get in the bag. I do note that through the mediation process, a lot of those things have changed, as Councillor Legal alluded to. in doing all of those changes, were those changes done wholly and solely to satisfy the objectors and the general public? Or was there council work? It appears there's been a lot of changes made to make this application as
Sure.
you can.
So, going back a step, I'm probably in a unique position where I work for a number of developers, and when this parcel became available for purchase, there was a number of clients that approached me to look at development options for that parcel. In terms of the yield, Mr Kay's dedicated that yield to 10 lots. There were certainly other development plans that were prepared that included a cul-de-sac or a porthole or a road connection that yielded far greater number of lots. With respect to our application and the amendments that we've made, we've very seriously considered the feedback that we received from the local residents, and that extends not just to the jetties, it also extends to things like lighting, fence treatments, access, vehicular access, those sort of things that the residents may have had concerns around, where we've either adjusted our layout, adjusted the concept of the jetties, or we've made provision or intend to make provision in the community statement for how the use of the land will happen going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, just for clarification, there's 10 titles in this community title.
Sure.
And that'll have definitions as to the usage or storage to stop any storage on these jetties that are proposed.
Correct. So there's two parts to that, if I may. The first part is the community title will include a management statement. The management statement will deal with other issues of use of the community areas of land. So that's not just the mooring or the storage or the short-term storage of boats. It's also how we deal with vehicles and trailers and where they can be parked and stored when your boat is in the water. So it's intended that the management statement will encompass that or require that those boat owners will remove their vehicle and car back to their lot, so that while they're using their boat, the transport route isn't blocked up with cars that are not being used. In terms of the management statement and the use of the jetties, it's certainly a short-term recreational use that we're envisaging. And I'll go back to the point I made before. That area of the lake, if the prevailing wind comes across the lake there, it would only be a short period of time before the boat, anything that was sort of stored there would be irreparably damaged.
Thank you. I was just going back to Councillor Thomas's comment where that under that title is the land where you intend to put your own wharfs, which would amount to half a mooring per person.
Correct. Yeah. So there's 10 community lots.
Yeah.
Or depending on how you define a community lot, but there's 10 community lots in terms of a residential lot, and there will only be 5 jetties.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If not, I'd like to thank you, Andrew. Mr. Mott, so we'll move to
Bring forward the report 9.9.
Thank you.
Mover and seconder.
Can I have
Moved.
thank
So
you,
moved.
Councillor Longmire, seconded by Councillor Longley. All in favour? Against, carried.
I'll just ask our Director of Development to introduce the report.
Thank you, General Manager. Item 9.9 is the development application 2019/140, an 11-lot community title subdivision and 5 jetties. Reported before Council, you have heard from one of the objectors and the applicant's representative this morning. As you'll see from the report, this is a very complex matter, and we have worked with the developer and the objectors to try and come to a suitable outcome and definitions. We've also worked with a number of state agencies, the Ombudsman, and internally, and the report is before Council for determination. One thing I'd like to say in response to the submissions made this morning, Maritime Services have been involved in this particular application. They have provided some submission which is attached for consideration. They've stated that there is no mooring permitted and that they will, if need be, ensure that there's time limits on boats that are attached to the jetties. So the other thing I'd like to state is when Murray REP2 was first made or gazetted, The only definitions in place were actually in the instrument itself or under the model provision. Now, reviewing the 1980 model provisions, there is no definition for a jetty or a marina or for berths or for a mooring. So in light of them having no definitions, the only option available to the staff was to use the definitions in the standard instrument. And that's where we are today with this proposal before council. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, councillors?
One, Mr Mayor, if I may,
Thank you.
so we have the time frame, so obviously there's been a lot of work done between when the original DA was lodged and the amended DA that is what is before us, not the original but the amended DA. So most of the, from what I'm reading in the report, most of the objections have been satisfied in terms of by moving the jetties to different homes.
Yeah, the history is it was lodged in July last year. We've waited for the exhibition period, had the objections and all the submissions from the agencies.
Yep.
At that point, we did get a lot of concern that it looked like a marina. We then took that back to the developer and they came back with the alternative, which is similar to what you're seeing now. We then went to mediation in February, after we also got the legal definitions from Murray-Darling Basin Commission and PDC lawyers. And at that mediation session, a number of the issues or concerns from the neighbouring residents were resolved in terms of moving the jetties. I think it's 2.5 metres, Andrew might be able to tell me this, 2.5 metres to the west to allow the public access area, which is the park next door, to allow that there is a safer transition between swimmers and people utilising this community area. And then from there, the plans have been amended.
Right. So the concerns from the Ombudsman and the concerns from the lawyer were not towards the amended proposal, but to the original proposal.
It came back to the point that as an assessing officer, we then have to determine whether we believe it's a marina or whether we believe it's a jetty. The applicants have done enough work for the assessing officer, myself and my other assessment officers to believe that these are jetties and not, they don't constitute a marina.
Okay. I do note that I think it's in the conditions that you're asking us to accept that there is one clause, condition number 36 or whatever number it is, no moorings. So,
No more,
yeah, so that means there's no provision for moorings to be constructed or any way to tie it up so that it could be considered a marina. Thank you.
Just I might add, Mr Mayor, in regards to the concerns of the Ombudsman more generally, we've sought legal advice on the role of the Ombudsman's officers in regards to a planning application midstream. So what role do they have? And we'd like to have that information. Couldn't get much of an answer out verbally when we discussed this for the previous application. Our solicitors, in regard to a previous application, said in their view that the matter should run its course. It's within a legal framework that would, as we all know, the planning system goes through a process, whether it's council approval or a panel, then subject to appeals to the Land and Environment Court. So the Ombudsman's matter is quite pertinent, and Mr Pearce has raised that as well. So they've still got a query on procedure and process and the whole gamut of things that the objectors spoke to. We've got a time frame to respond to that, but this application's come before council for determination, and we'll still respond to the Ombudsman along that way, but we're also going to be seeking advice as to how or what their role is going forward on all matters, because it's not something I've seen before where the Ombudsman keep getting involved midway through a process where applicants and objectors both have rights to have a matter get heard and then have it escalated if needed. So.
If I can just follow on from that, when, as part of the assessment process and lodging of an application, it is not council staff's role to determine whether an application is designated or integrated or complying development. It is up to the applicant to do that. And it's through the assessment process that we determine that, whether we believe it is or it isn't. In this particular instance, concerns came back and hence we went back to the developer and worked with them to try and clarify what the definition of the development is.
Thank you, councillors. If there's no further comments, I'll call for someone to move it. Councillor Longman.
I'd like to speak in favour of the development, Mr Mayor. It appears to me that any developments that seem to be on the river, everyone's objecting to them for a variety of reasons. This one obviously is going to create jobs in the town. There's 10 more house lots. It'll boost the economic position of businesses in Mulwala. I can't see anything wrong with it. Everyone's done the right thing and had a look, and I think they've discussed it with objectors. Everyone's happy other than one, and so I'm in favour of it.
So would you like to move that, Councillor?
Yes.
Do we have a second, Councillor? Seconded by Councillor Whitechurch.
Can I just remind the councillors before you do move that your votes are recorded on the register. This is for again.
In the division chart hands.
Yes. Okay, so there's no further questions or comments, councillors. Councillor Whitechurch.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to echo Councillor Longley's words. I had, like all development applications that come to council with objections or any public query, as major or minor as it may be, and this development application obviously generated quite a little bit of interest because it is in a fairly focal point on the main road and close to the lake. My question to the developer and the representatives was that were all of the other objections satisfied, which we've seen in writing, and I was very pleased to hear that things like lighting, fencing, I assume the aesthetics of how it looks, all those things in the process have been taken on board, and from what my understanding and what I've been presented with by our staff and by all those concerned is that the development application has gone through a very stringent and rigorous process to get to where it's got today, and whilst it's not initially what the developer probably wanted, they've come to an amicable agreement with a large sector of the community, and I take on board what Mr Pearce presented before, living on the river and having an interest in that, make sure that's all well and good, but I do believe that our staff and the developers have come to a very good situation, and we'll certainly have their support.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Actually, I just really would like to formally thank Director Appleyard and her team behind her. This particular DA has not been a easy process, but that is really good sometimes because it actually challenges our thought processes, and then to get our two guest speakers in the room today is really good, and I think pulling together the mediation session for our community, because as you know, all of us had representation made to us in some format with that particular DA when it came out last year. So I've had one community member touch base and would like me to pass that on to you, so all good.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, I think we're at the point. Councillor Wales, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I support the application. Having lived in that street many years ago, I know the area pretty well, and I think it'd be very good for that part of the area.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Wales. All right, councillors, if there's no further comment, I'll put it by show of hands, please. All in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We'll revert back, councillors, to General Manager's report. Before I just go on with the General Manager's report, I just wanted to give a brief update, especially to our gallery as well, to our councillors on Council's response to the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the threat and the real risk that poses to individuals, but also especially organisations. There's a whole raft of things we're working through behind the scenes, and we're going public on a number of matters, responding to Australian governments, directions, and state governments around events, etc. But more relevantly for today, along with really secure hand washing and other things, we're proposing. Councillors don't have it on their agenda, but they normally stop at 10:30 for a morning tea, and it does get quite cluttered and clustered in there, and we always welcome in normal situations the public and our media, etc. around that, but we just thought we'd see what the councillors' interest was in not having that formal break and just having some morning tea delivered around, and certainly if there's some refreshments out in that more open area there, the public are welcome to go and take advantage of that, and seeing whether or not we couldn't continue on till 12:30 to finish our agenda, and then possibly, obviously we have our lunch break, etc. But if councillors needed to use any of the facilities in the interim, it wouldn't be a big issue. I wouldn't have thought they could excuse themselves and come back in, and likewise staff and other gallery, but that's for councillors' consideration.
Councillors, just a feeling there, why don't we stay seated? We can have a 5-minute walk if you'd like to at 10:30, but have our morning smoko at the desk. And the public, there's still plenty of room out there and for the public to have a cup of tea if they'd like. How do you feel about that, councillors?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll just leave it in your hands if you
Yeah.
know, great. Yep.
So,
Thank you.
Councillor Meagle, did you want to?
Yeah, just in support of that to the General Manager, I think that we're in uncharted waters and in unprecedented times in this situation, and there is already a lot of fear amongst the community, and I think that it's time for Council to be respectful, vigilant, but also calm, and ask for calm within the community. I don't think that the fear and the panic achieves a great deal other than negative, and I commend that Council ask for calm. Respect and vigilance are the major ones. Be respectful of other people, be respectful of yourself in terms of the hygiene and the transmission, and be vigilant in terms of not putting yourself in situations that can lead to higher risk, but also to be calm, and rather than seeing some of the activities that have been happening, we're all going to be impacted by the loss of a lot of social events, and we don't realise how social we are as a community until they start cancelling things right, left and centre. So we support the General Manager and ask for calm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meagle.
Thank
Okay.
you. We'll go through our report. 7.1, Council brings forward a new report in this sense for this council. It's a council resolutions reporting. So it's an update of councils to council of the progress made against resolutions passed by former Urena Shire, now Federation, including all Federation resolutions as well. We're doing some background work to seek any resolutions that may not have been actioned, of a really important strategic nature in the Cora Shire days. We'll pretty quickly get a handle on that, and it's even more relevant that we make sure all of our resolutions become quite individual and actionable. So this is just a process report, but a good tracking mechanism for council, and ultimately the resolutions register becomes onto the council website, so that when you are resolving longer term issues especially, or positions, policy, that can be quite readily accessible to the public. So that's just there for information, and there is quite a number of them that are marked off as complete, because it's really the only way we can close our gap. Our circle is to report back to council on completion of resolutions, and there could be areas where council over time want to come back through. So we recommend will be either through workshop or other ways, councils will be able to come back to staff and myself to query where certain things are up to, and whether completed or not is your view as well. So that's for information. Movement second.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Longley. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
7.2 has been made aware to council, but it hadn't formally come back through to council on the unsuccessful grant application made for Lake Urena, major grant through the New South Wales State Government Environmental Tourism Fund. It went through all of 2019 in a process being assessed, etc. Wasn't successful. Did have some implications that council were going to make adjustments for if the grant was successful in terms of council's contribution. So this is just for the record that grant is not successful, recommending that council do continue on with seeking other avenues for different elements of that longer term project out there. But the recommendation clearly just says to note the report and to receive further reports as opportunities present for future funding.
Thank you. Do I have a move, please, councillors? Moved by Councillor Wales, seconded by Councillor Thomas. All in favour? Aye. Against, carried. Thank you.
7.3, Cora Golf Club request for financial assistance. This is a report that it also talks back to that one I spoke to on resolutions. This new recommendation wraps up, obviously the summer period's gone through. The golf club did write to council. We had several meetings about an urgent risk or threat of their air conditioning system failing. And further in this agenda, there is a report on federal government drought funding where this project was also flagged as a possibility within that. It's probably not going to, based on the committee and the assessment, it may not get the priority in that scheme, but also the council, it comes back to council because the summer's passed, we didn't have any urgent requests from the club, and they've flagged that they'd like to have continued support by us for any future grants and just to be considered in that space. So that's certainly our attitude and our intent is to continue to work and assist the club, but it is recommending that we don't make that exhibition for an external loan possibility, based on the fact that it's gone through summer and we haven't had any contact, thankfully, and that club was able to still have their events, etc. So the recommendation is to note the report, further consider that in the federal government project, which is further on in our Director of Corporate report, and if it doesn't make that list for the federal government grant funding, to continue to assist the club to seek any other funding that may present.
You happy to move that, Councillor Longmire? Can I get a seconded by Councillor Whitechurch? Councillor Longmire.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. As a person that supported the opportunity when it was like an emergency at that time, I'm happy to see this report come through, and it gives the opportunity for the golf club to go forward and source other funding or whatever they want to do. But at the time when this was, there has been some criticism levelled at me, and that's okay, in regard to supporting the opportunity, but it was an emergency and we stood up as a council, and luckily, well not luckily, properly it's happened so that we didn't have to go forward with it. So I'm quite happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Longmire. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Against, carried.
7.4, caretaker period for local government elections. So just an information report ahead of the council. It's an election year for all local governments in New South Wales, other than those that are under administration. So the recommendation there is to note the report. Within the last month of the election, the council has quite a number of restrictions and provisions, and that's clearly outlined there in the local government general regulations. So it's an information report for council to be aware of the caretaker period coming into effect 1 month before the elections.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by Councillor Legal. Any questions or comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Against, carried.
7.5, the Australian Local Government Association ALGA National Conference 2020, and in light of the quickly changing space with events being cancelled all around the place, it's not likely that this event would go ahead in Canberra on the 14th to 17th of June. We haven't had formal notification yet. This report was prepared earlier. So the recommendation is there for council to consider whether they did want to nominate delegates in the event it was attending, or make the call not attend at all in any event in terms of our risk management, etc. And we could still put forward motions if it was even done by other way, whether the board itself still met various ways. There's a number of different ways they could still proceed with the business of the agenda without having a mass gathering in Canberra. So it may reflect that we would change that recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Yes. Can I get a move first, councillor, please? Moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. Comment, Councillor Thomas.
That was busting.
I did actually attend last year with fellow Councillor Wales and yourself, Mr Mayor. It was brilliant.
Yes.
It certainly gives opportunity for connection and conversation at a national level, but I actually had formulated a couple of motions that we could consider placing forward, which would be really brilliant if we could consider these. I thought, in light of our announcement last weekend, Mr Mayor, in terms of the refugee welcome zone that we announced for Federation Council, and considering that there's 160 other councils on a federal level that actually have done the same, that maybe we could pursue this incredible initiative and formulate a strategy to make it happen. So maybe something along those lines could go to ALGA as well. And then some months ago we've been discussing some renewable energy options, especially for council and on a council-based level. Maybe that's something we could also consider going forward to ALGA. And the other point of call is that when we attended last year, I noticed that they have some national awards for different categories. And how spectacular if we could actually nominate our Ageing Well strategy and our Seniors Festival for a national award at the ALGA conference.
Excellent.
Because it is just so good.
Yes.
So if we consider those three, that would be brilliant.
I'd say we definitely consider
Yeah.
those. Any further comments? Councillor Longmire.
Are we sure that the event's going to happen because of the coronavirus?
No, we haven't heard anything. My guess would be it won't go ahead, but in saying that, I think the motions, because it'll also affect our state conference, but it's been pushed right back because of the election, so it's safer at this stage back in November. But yeah, I think it's quite worthy that we still formulate, if the council agree with those points, principles of those motions and the awards proposed, in the event they do defer it till later in the year or something. And I'd probably recommend we didn't do point 2 we're going to nominate
Yes.
delegates.
And I was going to ask Councillor Thomas, but the suggestion would be, as a general meeting, just put those forward, regardless, but have no attendance at the conference. It's the 27th of March. We're just on the edge of this
Oh, no,
virus.
sorry, this is June.
Is it June?
Yeah,
June's the
March
14th
18th,
to
yeah,
17th.
yeah.
27th cut off for the motion.
I think for planning, as a councillor, it'd be probably wise to make a decision now, in relation to attendance. I'd be very, very surprised if it went ahead. I would think it'd push back. How would you feel about, going in, June, Councillor Thomas? Would you be comfortable, or what are your thoughts on that? Just so that we can make a decision today on attendance.
Oh, on attendance or on our motion?
On
or our
our attendance, motions will go ahead regardless,
Yeah.
but whether there is attendance by Federation councils.
I really think that the attendance is probably out of our hands. I would say it would be a national strategy that they'll
Yeah.
pull together. And considering we've been getting some news feeds from a New South Wales LGA level, I would think that they will only follow suit in what they're recommending.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the other, it would be a COAG agreement type of thing,
And I think
And as you know, I mean, it's going to be above the current threshold of 500 anyway, because there was
that's right.
1,000 delegates there or something there last year, so, yeah, at this stage we'll be going ahead.
I think that supports, the council nominates any delegates to attend that council. I think we'll make a decision now, and it'll be consistent with what's made anyway.
We just leave that silent, take it
Yep.
out.
We can, yeah,
Council can finalise motions for submission.
definitely. Happy with that? Any further questions or comments?
And did you want to add nominate the Ageing Well strategy for the national award? Or?
Yeah.
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 Put that in nominate the Ageing Well. In the same one, I think, yeah.
There wouldn't be any restrictions, even if they're not in the motion. If there's something that could
Yeah.
come forward, you go
Yeah.
ahead for sure.
And nominate the Ageing Well strategy. And seniors events for the awards category.
Okay. I'll put it. All in favour? Against carried.
That's,
Where are the forms?
that's the end of, those ones. You'd have to adjourn if you want to have a break.
Yeah. Councillors, I might just adjourn for 5 minutes, just have a stretch. The idea is not to all rush into the kitchen. Someone will coordinate coffee and tea and those sorts of things, and bring it around to the table, or we'll do it in an orderly fashion anyway. Just respect that distance is important. So would someone like to move that we adjourn for 5? Moved by Councillor Longmire, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. All in favour? Against carried. And purely just a 5